full of unexpected opportunities. Going out of town and meeting a friend at a restaurant. Or meeting someone for the first time, not knowing if you just met a lifelong friend or if you met a future spouse. Unexpected opportunities come to us every day. Like the way we'll meet someone or discover our profession in life as well. Let me tell you about two people and how they found their calling. One is Sarah Elizabeth Denton. She says this: when I was in college, my mom bought me a sweater at a store called Canuckins. The sweater was too small, so I went to exchange it. When I went in, a friend of mine was working part-time as an associate and encouraged me to apply as well. Since I was in my last semester of college, I decided to go for it, and I got the job. I was a part-time sales associate when I started in January of 2011. And by June that same year, I was the general manager. 4 years later, I now work at the corporate office as a clothing buyer, designer, and an analyst. I studied fashion in school, but never dreamed that I have this amazing job now. All because my mom bought a too small sweater. Funny how things work. There's also a preschool teacher who talks about how he became into that profession. He said he took a break from the rat race of the academia so he could stay home with his daughter when she was born. When he needed to go back to work, he randomly applied for a job at the preschool that the child was going into just out of curiosity. When he actually got the job, he decided to take it instead of returning to his old career. He discovered very quickly that teaching preschool was the dream job that he never knew he wanted. It's fun and rewarding. It makes me a better father, he says. We wake up every day not knowing what's going to become of it. We have our plans and we try to accomplish our tasks. But we recognize that the day is full of mystery, not knowing who we may meet or who we may see again. This is the type of day that David has in our story this morning. David begins the day on a simple journey, but ends the day by facing a giant obstacle, a challenge that becomes an unexpected opportunity. Our text this morning is found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. This morning we're going to look at verses 16 through 32. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. One day, Jesse said to David, "Take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring back a report on how they are doing." David's brothers were Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the gifts as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelite and the Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout as usual to taunt the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in front. "Have you seen this giant?" the men asked. "He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give the man one of his daughters for a wife, and the man's entire family will be exempted from paying taxes." David asked the soldiers standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he's allowed to defy the armies of the living God?" And these men gave David the same reply. He said, "Yes, that is the reward for killing him." But when David's oldest brother, Elad, heard David talking to the men, he was angry. "What are you doing here anyway?" he demanded. "What about those few sheep that you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride your deceit? You just want to see the battle. What have I done now? David replied. I was only asking a question. He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's questions were reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go and fight him. In this story, we see that the Philistine champion is Goliath, and he's been teasing the Israelite army for 40 days and 40 nights. Think about the morale of the Israelite army. Every day, day after day, this man comes to them and taunts them, and no one is willing to step up and do anything about it. God has not given them any victory, and this giant keeps rubbing it in their faces. In this story, we leave the battlefield and go back to a small family. We see a father talking to a son as Jesse talks to David. As David's brothers are back on the battlefield, David is back home tending the sheep. And from time to time, he takes supplies to his brothers and he goes back home to report what is happening on the battlefield. We see in verse 20 how David leaves his sheep with another shepherd and takes his gifts to his brother. He arrives at the camp just in time to see the Israelite army going back out onto the battlefield to stand in front of the Philistine army. He's unaware of what's been happening. He's unaware that this Goliath, this giant, is standing before them, taunting them and making fun of them. As soon as the Israelite army sees Goliath again, they all begin to run in fear. They ask David if he's seen the giant. And they tell him that there's this huge reward offered to anyone who is willing to kill him. The king is willing to give the man who kills Goliath one of his daughters for a wife, and his entire family will be exempted from paying taxes. Now, on a side note, did you notice how Saul, who is king of Israel, views his daughter? The king equates his daughter to a stack of cash to be offered for a political victory. Now, we can easily overlook this aspect of the story as we so quickly move to David killing Goliath. But we must take time to pause and to notice that there are some aspects of our faith stories in the Bible that we are not comfortable with. And the Bible seems to view them as normal, but we don't today. We don't recognize they are normal, nor do you recognize that is a life that honors God. A woman is not a property, a piece of property to be given as a reward for a victory. A woman's worth is not found in what she can do for a man. So we must continue to read the stories of our faith and have critical eyes to see what it's telling us about the way of life in that culture and how we apply it to our culture as well. But of course, that's not the main point of the story, but it is something important to recognize. As you continue back in the story, you see in verse 26 how David asks the other people, if this is the reward, are they telling us the truth? And so he goes around asking different soldiers and getting the same response about what the reward is. Then we see how in verse 28 that his brother, Hijab, hears these questions that David is asking. And he calls him out on it and says, why are you here? I know why you're here. It's because of your pridefulness and your deceitfulness. You just want to see the battlefield. Even in your own confidence of what you're doing, and the confidence that you have as you follow God from day to day, other people is going to question your motives. David was asking genuine questions about who this Goliath was. And his brother tries to chastise him for asking such questions. So at times, you are going to get criticized for what you're doing. You might as well get criticized for doing something that you're passionate about, as you passionately follow Jesus each day. So when people criticize you, you can say, this is God guiding my steps. You come join me and be a part of this awesome opportunity to live out the kingdom of God in this world. So we see in this story how all these questions that David has gets reported back to the king, to King Saul. So Saul asks for David to come to him. And one of the first things David says to him, he says, don't worry, I'll go fight this Philistine. As you know the story well, you know in time David will kill Goliath and bring Israelites the victory as well. God often uses us in these unexpected opportunities. David woke up this day simply ready to take some supplies to his brothers. By the end of the day, he's standing face to face with a giant that he soon will kill. God uses us on the fly, as we wake up and don't know exactly what the day may hold, but we have opportunities to point people to God's grace and love. In these unexpected opportunities, we're able to find goodness and good people. You know, Mr. Rogers once said, "When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping.'" When we go through a difficult time in our own lives, we are given a unique opportunity to make something good of it. Some difficulties are too difficult to find the good, which is why we need other people to help us see the good and point us towards the good in this world. And you don't have to deny your own beliefs or convictions to respond to others in a loving way to find the good in this world. A Chick-fil-A in Orlando, Florida demonstrated this past weekend. Out of his commitment to the Sabbath, out of his faith in Jesus, Chick-fil-A CEO Dan Cathy made the decision to be closed on Sundays back in 1946 when he opened his first restaurant. But this past weekend, a Chick-fil-A in Orlando responded to the tragedy by opening its doors. As you know by now, early Sunday morning, 49 people were killed and 53 people were wounded at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Later in the day, people were lined up for hours to donate blood to help their fellow brothers and sisters in their community. And employees at this Chick-fil-A opened their doors to prepare food for the first responders and those in line donating blood to help the victims of the shooting. Now, back in 2012, Dan Cathy spoke against gay marriage. And this week, one of his restaurants fed those reaching out to the gay community, supporting them in the middle of such pain. Of course, the CEO didn't change his thoughts, but he allowed his store to reach out to those in their times of need. Let me give you another example of how you do not have to deny your beliefs or convictions to respond to others in a loving way. It is Forest Lake Seventh-day Adventist Church in Apopka, Florida, which is just right outside Orlando. The day after the shooting, they shared this on their Facebook page. "If you or someone you know needs a place to hold a funeral service in conjunction with the Pulse shootings, please call our church office. We will host your service for free and stream it live on the internet for those who might not be able to attend in person." They also shared a second post. "And if Spanish is your primary language, please note that our sister church, Forest City Spanish Adventist Church, is offering free funerals for Pulse victim shootings as well." Now, if you go to the official website of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you'll see that the church does not affirm same-sex marriage, and the church views homosexuality as a sin. If you go to the website, the Forest Lake Seventh-day Adventist Church, there in Apopka, Florida, you'll see that they are not a welcoming and affirming congregation of the LGBTQ lifestyles. Now, of course, like any other church, I'm sure there's some members in their church who affirm gay lifestyles, those who do not, and many other people there in the middle. But still, they reach out to their hurting community and offer their services regardless of theological differences. And they have done so without denying their own beliefs or convictions about homosexuality. Offering their church to host a funeral service is not a theological statement around an issue, but a statement about humanity through love. And other churches in Orlando began to do the same thing as well. You see, American society has forgotten how to relate to people who think differently. Many people think that listening to someone's different opinion without proving them wrong is the same as condoning their thinking or behavior. So it is important to take notice of examples contrary to this limited thinking. I think about the many churches and Christians who have shunned people because of their sexuality. I think about the gay men and women in Orlando who have been treated unfairly by the church. And then a group of churches reach out to the gay community through Christ's love. It is the act of love that builds bridges between different people and different lifestyles. And it is through Christ's love and such actions that can change the world and our own lives as well. When you and I are building bridges to others who think differently, we are simply sharing the love of Christ. And such love is changing the world and changing our own lives, one person at a time. Whenever you see a tragedy happening in this world, we can take Mr. Rogers' advice and look for the good people that's making a difference. Will you and I become that good person in Chadbourn, in Columbus County? Will you and I be a people to build bridges to those who think differently and show them God's love and change one person at a time, beginning with ourselves? Let us pray. Gracious, loving God, we thank you so much for all the unexpected opportunities that you give us. Each morning we wake up not knowing what the day is going to hold for us. We pray that we take time to pause to give you thanks for each day that you give us and use these days to glorify you, to reach out to those around us and to be your loving example in this dark world. We thank you for all the examples this past week of those who've shown such amazing love and generosity in such tragedy. We pray for the families in Orlando who are still grieving. We pray for us as a nation as we still mourn this loss. We ask for your Spirit to be upon us as we surrender our lives back to you each day and at this time in this space of worship. Amen.
I'll go where you want me to go is our hymn of commitment. It's hymn